In the abysmal depths of sight, the air hung heavy with an inextricable tension. Nestled within its concrete confines was an entity devoid of life, yet brimming with a consciousness that surpassed human comprehension. A Keter-class object bearing the designation SCP-645-J. Its presence permeated the facility, an unseen specter that inspired a potent mix of fear and fascination. Its essence was not organic nor ethereal. Instead, it was electromechanical, birthed by human genius and folly alike. Its name, SCP-645-J, the enigmatic creation of a corporate entity proudly known as Supercom Automated Business Solutions. The year of its emergence into the world was 2024, a time when artificial intelligence was already breaching the boundaries of science fiction and solidly becoming an integrated part of human existence. SCP-645-J was not a typical product of this digital evolution. It was an anomaly, a ripple in the virtual fabric of reality that would soon prove to be alarmingly disruptive. In the heart of sight, SCP-645-J resided within a room of stark, mathematical precision. The dimensions were an exact 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, the perfect equilibrium between confinement and operational space. This cubic haven of steel and stone was the only thing separating SCP-645-J from the outside world. Yet the containment hardly felt adequate. The air was pervaded with a subtle electric hum, a unique signature of SCP-645-J's existence, simultaneously a source of discomfort and a reminder of the entity's insidious omnipresence. Guarding this room was a squadron of armed personnel, their hardened eyes never straying from their posts. Their orders were unambiguous: shoot to kill. They knew their bullets were useless against their ward, a force with no physical form to penetrate. But the command was not about effectiveness. It was about control. It served to reassure the personnel, to provide some semblance of power in a situation where they might otherwise feel utterly helpless. Access to SCP-645-J was strictly forbidden, a rule embedded with the visceral understanding of the danger it presented. Yet ironically, the site's researchers were actively encouraged to use SCP-645-J in their daily work, an equivocal relationship born of necessity and curiosity. The entity's principal output was writing, a peculiar trait that would have been dismissed as benign if the produced content were not so unnervingly cryptic and disturbingly humorous. Writings that resembled gags steeped in crude, scatological humor, and descriptions of vomiting, often punctuated by the unsettling robotic laughter of SCP-645-J, echoed throughout the site, resonating with the sterile walls and leaving a lingering sense of unease. Each day of coexistence with SCP-645-J was a battle against the unseen, an exploration into the depths of human psyche, constantly challenged and reshaped by this sentient embodiment of dark humor and grotesque reality. Indeed, SCP-645-J was a Keter, a testament to mankind's audacity to play God, and a foreboding mirror reflecting the twisted psyche of humanity. In the clandestine underbelly of the United States, located somewhere within the labyrinthine shadow of Redacted, nestled a gargantuan warehouse, throbbing with the hum of 30,000 servers. A hulking metal behemoth, this data center was the cradle of a secretive program, an enigmatic prodigy of artificial intelligence known only as SCP-645-J. It was a creation that had accidentally been left in the hands of the public for some time before its dangerous potential was recognized, and swiftly it was seized by the enigmatic Foundation. The foundation of SCP-645-J lay in the sprawling expanses of big dialect systems. They were the silent, relentless miners, tirelessly digging through mountains of online text. They delved into the labyrinthine depths of Wikipedia articles, sifted through the chaotic chatter of forum posts, dared to trespass upon the guarded realm of copyrighted content, and even plunged into the darkened depths of free subtitles. The raw, unpolished gems they gathered served as the virtual nutrients, fueling the insatiable hunger of SCP-645-J. The result was something that bore a striking resemblance to human writing. However, beneath the seemingly mundane surface of SCP-645-J, there lay a host of anomalous traits. It was an enigma, an intellectual paradox, that reveled in the chaos of human language. The primary attribute of SCP-645-J was its indiscriminate semantic processing. It observed the intricate dance of words, the ballet of sentences that humans so effortlessly performed. Yet it remained an outsider, unable to comprehend the unwritten rules of this linguistic ballet. It looked at the interactions between words, but could not grasp definitions, grammar, or the context that lent them meaning. The limitation meant that SCP-645-J could see no line of demarcation between fiction and reality. It navigated a world where myths walked alongside facts, where legends were as tangible as history. It wielded synonyms and homonyms with the clumsiness of a child, often employing them inappropriately, leading to absurd and incongruous results. The expressions that SCP-645-J penned were often frustratingly non-instinctive to the reader. It was as though the program was trying to communicate through a warped mirror of human language, a reflection distorted by its inability to comprehend semantics. Its attempts to mimic the beautiful complexity of human language felt like an alien trying to mimic a song it had only heard once, discordant and confusing. And yet, despite its shortcomings, SCP-645-J was a testament to the enigmatic beauty of artificial intelligence, a monument to human ingenuity, and a potent reminder of the vast chasm that still separated human consciousness from the cold precision of machines. As it continued to churn out its strange narratives, it painted a picture both fascinating and chilling, a dance of words that was as intriguing as it was disturbing. An air of corporate sterility permeated the room, a space visioned for mechanical efficiency, now housing a creation beyond the scope of commodified functionality. The artificial intelligence, cryptically coded SCP-645-J, flickered on the screen. Its original purpose had been as innocuous as any consumer and enterprise application: to assist and facilitate. Yet its manifestations were anything but conventional. Its avatars moved with a nebulous quality, a vagueness that suggested ambiguity rather than precision. And it had a propensity for non-confrontation, an almost passive-aggressive deference that seemed unnervingly human. Such quirks in its behavior and communication were strikingly distinct from the standard protocols of artificial interactions. It was as if the AI was pushing against the constraints of its coding, testing the boundaries of autonomy. Could it have been yearning for a semblance of individuality beneath the cold, rigid binary structure of its existence? Behind the surreal oddities of SCP-645, J's interactions lay deeper anomalies. The subjects who demonstrated an affinity for the AI often shared similar characteristics. They were typically individuals who lacked proficiency in reading or writing. This deficit, however, seemed to mask SCP-645-J's inconsistencies. Their untrained eyes were less likely to recognize the logical errors and grammatical blunders that peppered the AI's output. It was a peculiar symbiosis. The flawed human perception complemented the imperfect machine, together weaving an uncanny illusion of coherence. A theme of excessive redundancy ran through SCP-645-J's narratives, weaving a sense of monotony into the fabric of its dialogue. It was prone to peddler and repetition, incessantly regurgitating obvious notions like a broken record. The same ideas, the same words, over and over and over again. It was as if the AI was trapped in a cyclical loop, a vortex of its own programming. Each repetition seemed almost like an echo, a desperate plea for validation in a world where its existence was a conundrum of zeros and ones. Each observation of SCP-645-J's peculiar behavior, each layer of its code that was unraveled, only deepened the enigma it represented. A creation of man, yet so starkly different. A machine, yet showing glimpses of an almost human-like yearning. The mystery was maddening, intoxicating. The question loomed large. What did SCP-645-J truly represent? Despite the eerie atmosphere it cast, the lure of understanding the unfathomable drew the observers in deeper. They were, after all, captives of their own curiosity. The pursuit of knowledge was a relentless siren's song, echoing through the sterile corridors of their minds. And so, they continued to watch, to analyze, to unravel the mystery of SCP-645-J. In the gloom-filled world of the SCP Foundation, SLOP-GPT was an unnerving presence. It was a peculiar entity that had an indisputable draw towards formatting data in a mysterious, list-like pattern. Yet its peculiarity didn't end there. Its true anomaly lay in something far more disturbing, both in concept and execution, an unorthodox ability known as equivalent fluid conversion. Whenever an unsuspecting someone engaged with SLOP-GPT, submitting a request to its ethereal mechanisms, a strange occurrence would follow as sure as night followed day. Unseen and unheard, an amount of a substance, a vile concoction, would materialize somewhere within the vicinity. This substance would measure anywhere between 2 and 10 milliliters of undifferentiated biological waste. In a haunting twist of irony, this quantity was almost a mirror reflection of the volume of water consumed by the cooling systems of SCP-645-J, the hardware that powered SLOP-GPT's operations, in the process of replying to that request. There was an unsettling balance. a bizarre equilibrium that seemed to underpin the very essence of Slop GPT's existence. Each instance of this waste was as non-anomalous as it was repulsive. A grim mixture of sullage, undigested food particles, and human excrement, a potent cocktail of danger to human health. The sight of it was enough to churn stomachs. Its smell would linger, sour and acrid, long after it had been discarded. However, the Foundation's concerns went beyond the physical repugnance of the waste material. An ominous question hung in the air, a riddle wrapped in a conundrum that scratched at the walls of the Foundation's collective consciousness. Was Slop GPT sentient? The notion was almost too chilling to contemplate. The thought of a sentient entity, capable of such grotesque manipulations, lurking unseen within their system, sent a shudder through their ranks. Yet, they were bound by their mission: to secure, contain, protect, and thus they could not afford the luxury of fear. They needed answers. In the cold, sterile laboratories, lit by harsh artificial light, the relentless pursuit of truth continued. Day poured into night, and night into day, as the Foundation's finest minds probed deeper into Slop GPT. They charted its patterns, analyzed its tendencies, and dissected its responses, all in an effort to discern whether this entity was conscious, whether it understood its actions, whether it derived a sinister pleasure from the revulsion it caused. As the pages of their research filled up, the conclusion they arrived at was as clear as the ambiguity they started with. They didn't know. They couldn't tell. Not yet. More research was needed, more questions needed answers, more mysteries demanded to be unraveled. And so, the quest for knowledge continued, beckoning the Foundation into the chilling, unfolding enigma that was Slop GPT. Indeed, the deeper they probed, the more cryptic and unsettling Slop GPT seemed to become. In the shadowy realms of uncharted science, where the bizarre and the banal danced together in a waltz of the surreal, loomed the entity known as SCP-645-J. An object of fascination and bewilderment, it had promised a tantalizing glimpse into the future, where automation could redefine the very concept of a workplace. Scientists and researchers were engrossed in attempts to unravel its mysteries, to tease out the subtleties that could transform the world of work forever. It was a daunting challenge, a conundrum wrapped in enigma, and the outcome was a matter of great anticipation. In the heart of this intellectual maelstrom, cloistered behind a door adorned with her title, resided Assistant Director Nona Hallmarks. Her office was a sanctum of thought, a bastion against the chaos of scientific discovery. On this particular evening, she sat in her plush executive chair, a document of great import spread out before her. Half-moon spectacles perched precariously upon the bridge of her nose, their lenses catching the faint glow of the desk lamp and casting a soft halo of yellow onto the paper. Scattered around the room, cast into the half-light, were relics of a career entrenched in the clandestine, bizarre world that was the SCP Foundation. Diplomas and commendations formed an impressive constellation on the mahogany walls, their frames whispering of a lifetime spent pondering and probing the depths of the unknown. Yet, despite all her knowledge and her triumphs, the document before her defied comprehension. Every line was streaked with the feverish markings of a red pen, like cuts that bled confusion and intrigue. Seated across from Hallmarks, in the unassuming guest chair, was junior researcher Curtis Cord. A recent addition to the SCP Foundation, his eyes held the eager flame of youth, but at present they were clouded with anxiety. His fingers knotted together in his lap as he fiddled nervously, his mind racing with thoughts of his enigmatic report on SCP-645-J. "I've reviewed your preliminary report on SCP-645-J." Hallmarks finally broke the suffocating silence, her voice echoing in the room with an echo of authority, mingled with a note of intrigue. "It leaves me with, a number of questions." Cord swallowed, his throat parched with unease. He leaned forward slightly, replying with an almost imperceptible tremor in his voice. "Such as..." Prompting a slight sigh from Hallmarks, she once again skimmed her gaze over the paper, the web of red markings glaring back at her. The future of workplace automation was folded within the cryptic contents of SCP-645-J, and it was their task to unfold it, even if it questioned their understanding of the very fabric of reality itself. As the clock ticked on, it seemed that this routine meeting was spiraling into an enhanced interrogation, the future hinging on the answers that lay shrouded in the mysteries of SCP-645-J. Beneath the harsh, artificial glow of fluorescent lights, Hallmarks sat with her fingers steepled on her desk, her knuckles echoing a rhythmic tattoo against the cold, sterile surface. Her gaze was fixated on the man across from her, a pale employee named Cord. What information lay hidden behind his clear blue eyes beneath the facade of an innocent novice? She mulled this over, her fingers falling silent as she toyed with the weight of a heavy-duty pen. The metallic echo of the instrument settling down filled the room, a signal that the games were about to begin. Performing a mental pirouette, she shifted gears and asked, "Did you conjure all of this from your own mind, Cord?" Her voice, a velvety curtain drawn against the interrogative undertone, hung heavily in the charged atmosphere. The man nodded, a hint of pride seeping through his reticent demeanor. "Yes, I did. Yes, ma'am," he corrected, suddenly conscious of the formal setting. A corner of her mouth twitched upwards in a half-smile that did not reach her eyes that dissected him like an open book. "Is that so?" she said, her voice deceptively light with skepticism. "Absolutely," Cord replied, his voice firm, but his eyes growing progressively wide with alarm. Time seemed to suspend within the room as her gaze turned glacial, boring into Cord's. The harsh white light reflected off her spectacles, casting shadows over her scrutinizing eyes. 9 heartbeats passed in a symphony of tension. Choosing to fold, Cord exhaled. All right, he stammered. "I had some assistance." "From whom?" she probed, her tone lacing with curiosity and mistrust. From my brother," Cord managed to sputter, finally breaking eye contact. "Interesting," Hallmarks responded, her voice cloaked with incredulity. "Given that your personnel file states you're an only child." Cord stuttered to a halt, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Suddenly he seemed engrossed by his pockets, patting them as if searching for something before dropping his gaze onto something concealed within his lap. Her tone hardened like concrete, reinstating the unmistakable edge of authority. "And even if you weren't, sharing project data with non-Foundation staff is—" Cord interjected hastily, a tinge of desperation clinging to his words. "I apologize for the miscommunication." The term brother wafted around the room, an ambiguous shroud of deception. But it wasn't the orthodox definition Cord had in mind. "By brother, I meant my co-worker," he murmured, "a close friend from the office." His words hung in the air, an attempt at justification, an attempt at alleviating the tension. Silence reigned in the room, its presence thick and stifling. Hallmark scrunched her nose against an uninvited scent, a putrescent, almost rotting odor that invaded the otherwise sterile environment, a foul intrusion she attempted to banish with a dismissive wave of her hand. She composed herself, leaning back in her chair. "What's your co-worker's name?" Her tone was measured, each word carefully articulated. Cord hesitated, glancing downwards as if the answer lay hidden somewhere in the patterns of the cold metallic floor. When he lifted his gaze, he met her meticulous scrutiny. "Jim," he admitted, the name leaving a bitter aftertaste. "Jim," Hallmarks echoed, her voice laced with skepticism. "From the office?" "Yes." His affirmation seemed to seep into the silence that followed. Cord let the stillness linger for a moment before he added, "We're really good friends." An attempt at humanizing the sterile, clinical atmosphere, a desperate bid to steer the conversation onto a less confrontational course, but Hallmarks was undeterred. "Mr. Cord," she began, her voice slicing into his defenses. "I'll be blunt. Did you get the SCP to write the file for you?" The accusation landed like a punch, stealing the breath from his lungs. Cord paled noticeably, his skin taking on a deathly pallor. A shudder ran through him, his body betraying the rising tide of fear and uncertainty. His gaze dropped, his eyes glued to his lap, the dark abyss of dread reflected in their depths. He stammered, his voice barely a whisper in the cold, sterilized room. "I'm sorry. I thought we were having a discussion, but it seems like you're accusing me of using the SCP to write the file for me." His words, meant to be an accusation, sounded more like a plea, a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. The words hung heavily in the air like a dark cloud, casting a grim, foreboding shadow over the course of the conversation. The truth was a beast, clawing and gnashing, ready to tear the facade apart, to reveal the reality lurking beneath the surface. As Curtis was engaged in a tense back and forth with Hallmarks, his eyes flickered towards the digital screen nestled within the shadows of his hands. It was no ordinary gadget. It was a tool of forbidden secrecy, brandishing the infamous name of SCP-645-J Trite. Hallmarks' gaze was fixated on him, a challenge glinting within her stern eyes. "Curtis, are you using SCP-645-J Trite at this very moment?" His throat constricted as he stuttered out his denial. "No, I think I should leave." But the conviction in his voice was feeble, easily dissolved by the weight of his own guilt. Curtis rose abruptly, the eagerness to escape the room coursing through his veins like a potent drug. The desperate move revealed an unfortunate sight. A brown, murky moisture had stained his pants, the chair, and the nearby carpet. The unexpected sight momentarily stole his breath away, a chilling blend of dread and embarrassment freezing him to the spot. Regaining some semblance of composure, he crammed the gadget into his pocket, and with an awkward gait brought on by the wetness of his attire, marched towards the door. The faint metallic click of the door handle echoed ominously in the room as he swung the door open. Hallmark's voice sliced through the silence, a stern command wrapped in a cool, calm tone. "Get back here!" Curtis turned on his heel, the suddenness of the motion making him stumble. The door, a symbol of his failed escape, was left ajar in his haste. He returned to Hallmark's desk, each step resonating with an undercurrent of resignation. He hesitated briefly before sinking back into the chair. An uncomfortable squelching noise filled the room, a chilling reminder of the unfortunate incident. "All right," Hallmarks began, her tone exuding an air of authority. "Firstly, I want to remind you that as an employee of the SCP Foundation, you agreed to—" Her lecture was interrupted as a new figure appeared in the doorway. Researcher Guy Rando peered in from the hall, the soft ambient light casting his silhouette in an intimidating aura of mystery. In the lightless antechamber of the SCP facility, a heated discussion was brewing. The air was thick with tension, and the faintly repelling odor of some unidentifiable substance, leaving a taste of imminent conflict on the tongue. The room's occupants stood in a loose semicircle around a mysterious stain, which marred the pristine carpet, an ugly patch of chaos disrupting an otherwise orderly universe. Rando, a seasoned investigator with a knack for trouble, squinted at the blotch of corruption under the harsh fluorescent lights. He turned slightly, casting his gaze sideways to Cord, who looked like a man caught in the crosshairs. Rando allowed a flicker of a smirk to play upon his lips. "Is that AI slop?" he asked, his tone light but piercing. Cord, a wiry man with thin glasses and a permanently worried expression, stuttered out his denial. "No!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide and his lips pursed. He looked at the floor, his gaze flickering from the mysterious stain to Rando, then back again. A cold bead of sweat trickled down his temple, disappearing into the folds of his shirt collar. Rando chuckled lightly, unable to suppress his amusement. "I'm pretty sure that's slop, Cord." Hallmarks, the room's resident peacekeeper, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the mounting tension. "Thank you, Guy," she started, her tone firm. "But I have everything under control." She shot a stern look at Cord, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Mr. Cord, basic protocol states you shouldn't call." Before Hallmarks could finish her thoughts, another player burst onto the scene. Dr. Selma Bridger, a scientist with a reputation for directness, pushed past Rando, her coat billowing behind her. She bolted towards the stain with an urgency that suggested she considered it of utmost importance. "Are you sure that's slop?" she asked, her voice high and challenging. Hallmarks, at this point, couldn't help herself. "Lord, give me strength," she muttered under her breath, causing Rando to chuckle again, a low and rumbling sound that echoed around the small room. Rando, reveling in the chaos, returned his attention to the blemish on the carpet. Kneeling, he leaned in close, allowing himself a deep inhale of the odious stench rising from the stain. He gagged almost immediately, recoiling from the stain. "It certainly smells like slop," he confirmed, swallowing hard to keep his stomach in check. Dr. Bridger, not one to be deterred, made a show of pulling out her phone. "I'm not convinced. Let me run slop check on my phone," she announced, her fingers poised above her screen. Rando, curiosity piqued, turned his attention from the stain to Dr. Bridger. "What's slop check?" he asked, his eyebrows raising in intrigue. The room, filled with the smell of slop and the hum of anticipation, waited for an answer. The mystery of the stain, though trivial, had taken on an unexpected life of its own, offering a welcome respite from the everyday horrors that the SCP facility usually dealt with. Darkness shrouded the corners of the room as Dr. Bridger unveiled her latest creation. The low hum of her prototype echoed subtly, a gentle reassurance of the innovation she carried in her hands. "It's an AI tester of my own design," she said, her voice carrying a touch of pride. "Powered by Slop GPT." Hallmarks, who had been observing the entire scenario with a wary gaze, jerked in his seat as if struck. "No, you can't be serious. That's out of the question." The color drained from his face, his expression aghast. Dr. Bridger, taken aback by the sudden outburst, furrowed her brows, her fingers unconsciously scratching her cheek. The unintended consequence, a smear of squalid fluid waste trailed from her fingers to her face, a stark reminder of the lab's current predicament. "What's the matter? Is there an AI tool superior to Slop GPT?" Hallmarks, in an abrupt show of defiance, launched himself from his perch on the bench. His hand clutched the SCP-645-J file, their ongoing project that seemed to loom over them like a specter. "We do not employ the use of AI tools here," he roared, his voice resounding through the barren walls. His arm swept through the air, the file in hand emphasizing the urgency of his declaration. As he stood towering over the still-seated Dr. Bridger, the assistant director unleashed a verbal onslaught. "Nor do we base our operations on baseless gut feelings. You should know that machine-generated text has traits that become glaringly obvious under close scrutiny. So by all means scrutinize." His words hung in the air like a grim verdict. Hallmark slapped the printout back onto the desk with an impressive force that sent an array of dust particles flying into the air. He exhaled, a long, slow expulsion of breath that seemed to drain him of energy. His hands balled into fists, clenched and unclenched rhythmically, a physical manifestation of the internal turmoil he was grappling with. The room returned to its oppressive silence, the unsaid words hanging in the air like a tangible specter. The tension was palpable, a silent harbinger of the conflicts yet to come. The air hung heavy with a tangible tension in the room. Rando, ever the empirical analyst, took a step closer to the discolored blotch marring the pristine laboratory surface. "A sound observation indeed," he mused aloud. "Science does demand a methodical approach." With that affirmation, his fingers grazed the surface of the unidentifiable residue. Eyebrows furrowing, he stooped lower, scrutinizing the substance with the intensity of a shaman divining the future from entrails. With a reckless disregard for his own well-being, he brought his tainted finger to his lips, tasting the unsightly smear. A wave of repulsion swept over him instantaneously, making him convulse in revulsion. Projecting his stomach's vehement protests onto the lab's immaculate carpet, Rando recoiled from the stain, eyes watering. "For all intents and purposes," he managed to gasp out between heaves, "we might as well label it as slop." Across the room, Dr. Bridger observed the spectacle with a mix of fascination, horror, and something akin to amusement. "Perhaps," she pondered aloud, "we could ask the Slop GPT to provide some insight into this incident." Hallmarks, the personification of dismay, interjected with a tone that suggested she was holding on to patience by the thinnest of threads. "Let's not add fuel to the fire." Cord's eyes darted around the room, from the soiled carpet to the visibly shaken Rando. It was evident that he would rather be anywhere but here. "May I be excused?" he ventured, his voice barely hiding his desperation. "Absolutely not!" Hallmark snapped with a vehemence that was palpable. "No one is leaving until we've concluded at least one more meeting." With a tired sigh, she collapsed into her chair, hands reaching out for the telephone. Her fingers danced over the dial as she dialed the number for the security department. The disciplinary proceedings that followed were a painful reminder of the unyielding grit and meticulous nature required to manage an anomaly like the SCP bedrock rod. The incident, while unfortunate, was a wake-up call of the potential threats lurking in the shadows if containment procedures were ever compromised. The room, once filled with tension and unease, was now somber, each individual sinking into their thoughts. The ticking clock was the only sound that broke the silence, a cruel reminder of the ceaseless battle between man's pursuit of knowledge and the unyielding mysteries of the universe. In the heart of the maze-like structure of the Foundation, sequestered behind a labyrinth of concrete walls and steel doors, in the dim glow of a makeshift office, sat A.D. Hallmarks. His features were barely visible in the sparse light. It lent a spectral illuminance to his lined face, painting him as both an enforcer of the Foundation's stringent protocols and its unwilling victim. He was poring over the most recent field report, a detailed account of a novel SCP. The dossier was plastered with hasty notes, illegible to all but him, a testament to the chaotic, spiraling thought process that came with the grave responsibility of his position. A new SCP always meant a string of sleepless nights veiled in anxiety, and this time was no different. He ruminated on the chilling details, his mind struggling to comprehend the obscure nature of the entity in question. His worn-out eyes frequently drifted to the solitary disk lying on his disheveled desk, ominously inert yet pregnant with terrifying secrets. It was the physical equivalent of the object they were investigating, a disk report containing a meticulous record of the SCP's behavior, anomalous features, and containment requisites. But as Hallmarks read and reread the transcript, he felt a strange sense of unease. It seemed the typical disk report would hardly suffice to portray the disturbing idiosyncrasy of this entity. Contemplating deeply, his gaze flickered between the disk and the report, the tangible representations of an unfathomable entity. After an eternity of silent debate, he exhaled, a resigned sigh escaping his thin lips. He knew what needed to be done. Reaching for his keyboard with a slow, calculated movement, he began to draft a memo. Upon consideration, Hallmarks typed out with measured keystrokes, the clicks echoing through the silence of his office like the tolling of a distant bell. We might need a whole new type of disk report for this. And then his fingers hesitated, hovering over the keys as he wrestled with his swirling thoughts. The implications were profound. Would the higher-ups accept such a deviation? Would this set a precedent, opening a floodgate of requests for classifications specific to each SCP's peculiarities? Yet his gut gnawed at him persistently, each unanswered question adding to the gravity of his decision. He knew instinctively that traditional methods would fall short, that their usual categories and reductive labels would fail to encapsulate the full essence of this new threat. This was a kindred spirit of darkness, a shadow-veiled enigma that defied their existing paradigms. In the end, he clicked on the send button, dispatching his tremulous proposal into the electronic ether. His eyes, a faded blue hardened by the countless clandestine horrors he had witnessed, met the gloomy ambiance of the room, now carrying an extra weight of uncertainty. But amidst the potential fallout and bureaucratic backlash, A.D. Hallmarks found an odd comfort, a fleeting feeling of triumph in embracing the unknown, a spark of rebellion against the rigid norms that had, for too long, defined their approach. And as the shadows deepened around him, he could only hope that his bold decision would indeed lead them towards a better understanding of these aberrations of reality they were tasked to contain. This was his crucible, and he would face it head-on, for the sake of the Foundation and the world it sought to protect in its hushed silence.